All right, so here is the main question of the day. Is the Unihertz Titan a great phone for the blind or the visually impaired? Let's get into this. This is your blind techno geek that explores iOS and Android. I am so sorry I haven't been filming for a while. I have been so sick. All I could do was just lay in bed and stay home from work. So here it is. This is the first ever phone that I have tested with a full QWERTY keyboard. I've tested the blind shell and I've tested the Smart Vision, which uses the T9 texting standard formula. So this is definitely a bit of a stretch for me because, again, I have been wanting to do this for years, but I've never been able to get my hands on a BlackBerry Key 2. And so when I saw this phone, I went, great. This runs Android 11. This is definitely more updated than the BlackBerry. Actually, this runs Android 10, to be honest. The new one, the Titan Pocket, runs Android 11. But it was much more updated specs than the BlackBerry phone, so I decided to go with it. I'm going to describe first the phone itself. My first impression of it is, whoa, this is heavier and much thicker than I expect in a phone. I have never had a phone that is so wide it can barely fit in my purse. And that was definitely the case for this phone. The good news is it makes the keyboard wider to type on because I have to type with two hands. I cannot type with just thumbs. I'm so used to the QWERTY layout on a regular keyboard on a computer that I have to type that way on this phone. And any skinnier, and the keyboard would probably be too cramped. In fact, this is already a little too cramped. So that's definitely my first impressions when I got this phone 2 weeks ago, just as I was coming down with this nasty viral infection. So start at the top. We have a proximity sensor, and I believe might even be a headphone jack. Let's test it out. I've never actually... Yep, this is actually a headphone jack. This is not a proximity sensor. So, if I could find my iPhone, it would be great. There we go. Okay, so at the top we actually have a headphone jack. We do have the proximity sensor, but I don't think it's actually able to be touched. I think that's what this is on the top right corner of the phone, somewhat next to the front-facing camera, kind of on the top bezel here. On the sides of the phone, this phone is made out of metal on the sides and rubber and metal on the back. We have your volume rocker first, and then you have your power button. Trying to see if the SIM tray is back here too, because it was hard to find the SIM tray on this phone, I'll have you know. And then on the bottom we have a USB-C charging port. This is a USB-A to USB-C charger. That's what it takes. Oh, there's the SIM tray. Okay, so on the left side we have a programmable button, kind of like we have on
set to 100%.
the Smart Vision, where we have the dictation button, or the blind shell, we have got the dictation button, but this is programmable, so you can call up Google Assistant, turn on the flashlight. I can go through all of those in another video because there are a bunch of functions that you can do with this button with either a single press, a double press, or a press and hold. And then you've got your SIM tray. And yeah, it was definitely hard to find. Okay, now on the front of the phone you've got a screen. This is a smaller screen than I actually am used to, because it does not cover the full face of the phone. I should be used to that with a blind shell, but definitely kind of odd to have a square-shaped screen on a phone where you're used to your typical rectangular-shaped screen. And then you've got the physical keypad. And the physical keypad...
Device unlocked.
Oh,
3:12 p.m.
See, I bumped the fingerprint sensor, and that leads me to the next thing. You've got
Screen off.
5 buttons on the top row of your keyboard. One of these, which is the middle one, the third one from the left, is not an actual button. It is a touch capacitive home button that doubles as a fingerprint sensor. Now, that is definitely the downside of it, me just bumping it. And all of a sudden I've opened the phone because I've bumped the fingerprint sensor, or I go to hit one of the other buttons and I bump the home button and I'm outside of that text message that I meant to hit the other button in. So you've got flanking the capacitive home button, 2 buttons to the left and 2 buttons to the right. Now the 2 buttons to the left, starting with the first one on the left side of the phone, is your shift key. And there's actually some programming in the settings that allows you to switch your shift and your alt key. And I'll show you where the alt is as soon as I'm done with the rest of these buttons. Beside your shift key, you have your recents key. That is the Android recents key, which is cool that it is a button. It's just that whenever I go to press that button or the back button, which is to the right of the capacitive home, but I shouldn't even call it a button. It's a touch sensor. You accidentally bump that touch sensor trying to go back or recents. And then last but not least, right at the very right edge of the top row, on the right side, you've got your alt key, which again, you can actually switch off with your shift key on the settings. So then of course you got your typical QWERTY keyboard. The only thing I see that is kind of odd on this phone is that the row, the last row, it's weird. I'm so used to a full-on QWERTY keyboard with an alt key and everything like that, that I hit the wrong buttons all the time because your V and your B flank the space bar. So that row with the Z, the X, and all of that, it flanks your space bar. So it's actually kind of odd. Of course, on the back of the phone, you have one camera sensor, and there's metal flanking that, but there's a rubber back, and then you've got your metal logo, and then flanking the logo, you've got 2 speaker grills, except one of them is to fake you out. It's not real. The other one is a speaker. It's actually a pretty good speaker, but that is the worst place to put a speaker, because when you lay the phone down, if you've got it on a bed or a pillow, you can barely hear your notification sounds, especially with this viral infection that I had. It messed with my ears, something awful. So, oh my gosh, I had some difficult times. Anyway, I got a case for this phone, and it is a very, very thin, barely protects your phone case. Because this phone is actually meant to be rugged. So if you drop it, it should not break the screen. It actually came with a screen protector, which is something that I definitely installed almost right away. And then when I got the case for it, it came with an extra screen protector. And the screen protectors are not glass, they are plastic ones, but they're still pretty good. But yes, you've got metal flanking the screen so that the screen is not exactly sticking out the way that it would on a regular smartphone when it doesn't have a case on it. So let's go ahead and do the fingerprint sensor one more time. You'll feel a vibration, hear a sound, and of course, this actually talks. I'm in a text message with my best friend, Priscilla.
Suggested reply. What do you mean? Priscilla Walton said I was editing. Test. Comma.
And I already wrote test. And the kick a keyboard. Okay. So what bothers me is that this does not have symbols. So I'm forced to use the virtual keyboard, which is called the kick a keyboard. But it's not accessible. For some reason, I go to press one of the symbols, like a question mark, and it doesn't do anything. And this also doesn't have a number row. So In some cases, I am stuck using dictation,
Space delete key.
which
S
does
equals
work on
capital
this
T deleted.
phone, but for some reason, this phone will not allow me to change to the Google keyboard, which is an absolute travesty to me. But it uses everything else Google. It uses the Google Calendar. It uses Google Messages. Now I'm going to type with 2 fingers. I have to do it as though I'm typing on a normal keyboard screen, or a keyboard, like a computer keyboard.
Capital T E S T.
I can write certain words fast enough, like the word test.
Period.
But if I want to put on this phone,
Capital N space T H I S space P H O N E period.
sometimes I hit the wrong letters. Like I hit the M instead of the N, or I hit the B instead of the N because I'm so used to a wider keyboard. And
Explore mode. Send SMS button.
let's send this
Sending
puppy.
message. Double tap and hold. Message sent.
So this is Google. But anyway,
Navigate up button. Explore emoji button.
even when using dictation, it just wants to default to the kick a keyboard.
Double tap and hold to record audio. Slide left to
And then it won't stop talking sometimes when you're trying to use the Google dictation, which is the
explore editing. Attach from camera or gallery. Editing.
So, how do you switch input methods?
Switch input
Let's
method
see.
button. Window navigation bar.
On the bottom right of the screen, bottom right corner, you've got switch input methods.
Unlabeled. Switch input method. Keyboard hidden. Choose input method. Show virtual. Keep it on screen while physical. On. Switch. Not checked. Radio but checked. Radio button. Kaika keyboard. Not checked. Radio button. Google voice typing.
Testing. Testing.
Walton.
1,
Editing.
2,
Text message.
3.
Edit box.
And see, it talks too much. It will not.
Explore emoji. But editing. Text
It
message.
won't
Edit
shut
box.
up.
Attach from camera or add files. Location. You said test. On this phone. Attach. Editing. Text message. Edit box. Explore. Double tap and hold to record audio. Slide left to cancel.
So what I'm finding with this phone, in conclusion, is that it's not the best and it's not the worst for visually impaired people. There are some functionalities that do make it really cool for visually impaired people. And I'm going to do a separate video on the intelligent assistants, because I think that these features are pretty cool. Like answering and ending calls, for example, and other things like that. So, without further ado, that is all for right now, folks. See you later, Technogators.